Welcome to the New Stewards podcast, where we speak to believers all around the world, find out what they are doing to combat the changing climate, and how their faith drives them in their work. My name is Ilyas, and I'm on a mission to ensure Muslims become global leaders in addressing climate change. I believe we were put on this planet as stewards and trustees, or in Arabic, khalifas. In this podcast series, I hope to discover what it means to be a steward on Earth, so we inspire and enable millions of Muslim sustainability leaders. Today, my guest is Dr. Iyad AbuMoghli. For the past 26 years, he has worked for the United Nations. He is the founder and director of the Faith for Earth initiative, which is part of the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP. Before joining UNEP, he served for 14 years in the United Nations Development Program. Today, we will discuss why it is important to include faith in the environmental movement, and we will learn more about creating change from a very senior expert in creating change worldwide. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Iyad. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you, Ilyas.
All right, so let's dive right in. You've been at the United Nations for over 26 years. And then in 2017, you came to the conclusion that it was time for a faith department or a faith-focused movement within the UN. Why did you start the Faith for Earth program at UNEP?
Thank you, Ilyas, for this important question. And as you know, the United Nations is there to support member states and countries in achieving their sustainability agenda. And as the globe is facing a complicated set of issues, be it social, economic, and environmental, in 2015, the 193 countries adopted the global agenda that is called Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. And we all know that this is an ambitious and inspiring agenda, but it cannot be implemented by countries or governments alone. So the implementation must be done by all stakeholders, including, private sector, civil society organizations, and what have you. And when we look at the spectrum of players that are contributing to the sustainability agenda, we found that there is a sector of the society that is underutilized and under-engaged, which is the sector of faith-based organizations and faith actors. And specifically because culture is an important pillar, although it is not obviously integrated into the Sustainable Development Goals, while it is in the targets. So we thought of bringing that perspective and that sector into the implementation mechanism, because faith and religious organizations bring that cultural and behavioral component and the value system in the practices in terms of socio-economic and environmental development. The second component or the second factor is that, many people don't know or don't realize the powers that faith organizations bring into the play. The first power is the power of convincing and convening. Every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday, and other days of the week, you find faith and believers go to houses of worship, where in hundreds of thousands of people go to worship, and they listen to preachers. And we hope through this program, we make these preachers, in addition to fulfilling the spiritual needs of the people, to fulfill also the daily needs of the people in living in harmony with nature. So the convening power, a call for a prayer, would bring together hundreds of thousands of people. and the convincing power, which is the power that relies on the sacred scripture of religions. For example, you find Muslims, 1.8 billion Muslims, or Catholics, 2.2 billion, believe in what is mentioned in their holy scripts more than anything else, more than any best written scientific report. So the
Hmm.
convincing power is there in the sacred scripts. And the second type of power is the economic power of faith-based organizations. Our research shows that they are the fourth largest economic power on earth. They
Wow.
own, for example, more than 50% of educational institutions at the global level. They own more than 8% of habitable land, which is, the 36 times the size of the United Kingdom. So the amount of assets and resources owned by faith-based organizations can contribute to the sustainability agenda. So we thought of a mechanism, a strategy to engage faith-based organizations. So in 2017, we came up with the UNEP strategy for engaging with faith-based organizations, and we launched the Faith for Earth initiative as a mechanism to implement that strategy. The strategy aims to achieve three important goals. The first goal is to provide a platform for policy engagement, because we don't want faith organizations just to say we are interested, we are there and support, but we want them to be engaged on the policy issues in discussing with politicians the spiritual and value-based importance of living in harmony with nature. So the first goal is policy engagement. The second goal builds on the economic power of these organizations. So we want to work with faith organizations to green their assets and financial investments, which we are talking about billions and billions of dollars. So redirecting their investments into financing sustainable development. And the third
Hmm.
goal is actually linking the sciences to religious understandings and teachings. For far many years, there has been some sort of disconnect between what the sciences are saying and what the scriptures and religious teachings are saying. But in fact, there is huge commonality between sciences and religions. So we're working on that common understanding. So we analyze and assess and bring the relationship between the understanding of religions on living in harmony. What does stewardship, for example, mean in terms of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution? So this important element brings the scientific understanding to religious leaders and the spiritual and the scripture of religions into the sciences. So this is how we came about and how the initiative was established.
Well, so is one of your roles to also build capacity within religious leaders for them to be able to convene the message of either climate change or environmental degradation and be able to link that to their own spiritual texts?
Definitely. What we have started when we started have done is that to sense the understanding of religions of the different types of issues. You might find some people really understand the connections of their religions to nature from all aspects, but the majority of the people, especially faith followers, who we want actually mobilize, because working with faith leaders leads to the impact on the faith followers. But if you ask a faith follower, they would answer in general terms
Hmm.
what the relation of their religion with nature, but they do not understand the intrinsic relationship with the modern and contemporary environmental issues like biodiversity loss, like climate change, or ecosystem degradation, or pollution. So these are very important to be understood, and how they are related to their scriptures. So the first thing we started is, taking the priority issues at the global level and looking into at least 12 of the major religions in terms of number of adherents, and translate what is mentioned in the scriptures into what is mentioned in the scientific reports. So we have
Hmm.
published thematic papers and online training courses on, for example, climate change and Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and so on. Consumption and production patterns, and how it is related to the different religions, pollution, even environmental security, even financial or financing sustainable development, how it is mentioned in the scriptures. For example, how zakat in Islam leads to sustainable development, how the tenth of Christianity, paying 10% of their belongings, how does it contribute to sustainable development, and so on. So capacity building, and we have, engaged and organized dozens of workshops, global conferences, online courses, published reports and documents to actually make that understanding in a language that is easily understood by faith leaders and faith followers.
Is it challenging to do for you as an outsider, perhaps coming from a different organization, um, to engage with either faith leaders or faith followers and inform them on perhaps aspects of their faith they do not yet fully understand themselves?
Well, yes, I do not claim, or UNEP doesn't claim, that we are the doers of it. We are the ones who are doing everything. Of course, we do everything in partnership, and we cannot preach to the preachers, right?
Mm.
Um, so
No.
we work in partnership with renowned, respected, experienced organizations that have access to faith leaders and faith leaders and faith followers, as well as players at the global and regional and national levels. So whatever we produce, we sense it with important organizations. For example,
Mm.
we issued a textbook that is now being used at the university level with the Parliament of World Religion and Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology.
Mm.
We send for review our thematic papers to be sensed by the faith-based organizations and NGOs that are working in that domain. We just published two guidelines on faith tree growing, and we did that with World Wild Fund, WWF, and the Center for Earth Ethics. So we do that in partnership, and we sort of verify the content of these materials and capacity building tools with those who have, the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, but also the scientific and educational knowledge in, making these relevant to the audience that we are targeting.
Okay. So you as an organization are the convening power, perhaps bringing together, like just like you said, scientific knowledge, religious knowledge, other relevant sources of knowledge to bring together those different sources. You're not adding or coming up with anything new. You're just
Well, I
creating
would
knowledge that's
say,
already there.
yeah, I would say we are bringing with something new because for the past 20 years, scholars have written in general terms about, religion and the environment. But since we were established, we went further into the specifics of the environment because
Mm,
environment is not only climate change, it is also ecosystems, it is biodiversity, it is pollution, it is consumption, it is finance, it is security, environmental security, and so on and so forth. So this is the newness that we are bringing, which is, digging deep into environment and what it means at all levels, how
mm,
religions can contribute to climate change, to living the wasatiyya way, as in Islam, for example, the midway of no excessive consumption, living within the limits of nature and the natural capital that we have.
mm. Okay, I see. Understand. And then what you're working on right now, or what you've been working on for the past couple of years, is the Al-Mizan program, right? Which is even more specifically aimed in our case for this conversation. And I know you're doing more on other religions, but the Al-Mizan program, which is specifically aimed at Islamic actors and bringing together that covenant within Islam, right? Could you explain what the Al-Mizan program is and what your aims are for that program?
Definitely. And again, looking at what is happening out there, and, in 2015, something innovative was done by Pope Francis and the Vatican, which is called Laudato Si. And
Mm,
Laudato Si is an encyclical letter issued by Pope Francis on the relationship between the biblical teachings, the what the Bible is talking about, nature, and of course everything related to nature, like economy, like social and equity, and so on, and the problems that we are having today, and has created this Laudato Si movement in mobilizing action by Catholics. So when we looked at the spectrum, the Catholics represent 800 million people. And so we are leaving out uh, almost 7 billion other people. So
mhm,
Muslims represent, 1.8 billion of the population of the people on earth. And the beautiful thing about Islam is it has one coherent scripture, which is Al Quran Kareem. And when you read Al Quran from an environmental perspective, you would say this is an environmental book. It talks about, balance and everything. It talks about lands and
mm,
skies. It talks about soil. It talks about water. It talks about birds and ants and, trees. There are specific species mentioned in the Holy Quran. So it
mm,
is an environmental book. So we brought 13 Islamic scholars from around the world, from different continents, representing different sectors of Islam or sects. And we have been on over the past 2 years working in collaboration with some other organizations like the Islamic Scientific and Education Organization, ISISCO, like the Islamic Foundation on Environment and Sustainable Sciences, and others, in analyzing what are the global contemporary environmental issues and how they are reflected on in the Holy Quran. So
mm,
Al-Mizan document came about. Now we have a good draft. It has been translated into 5 languages so far. And it talks about, environment, the economic development paradigm that has led us to where we are now, the social benefits of living in harmony with nature, like equity, like, gender perspectives, like the empowerment of people, and so on. So it's a very comprehensive document.
Is
However,
it can people find it somewhere? Has it been published?
not yet. The
Okay.
reason is that we're still waiting for endorsements, because we don't want this to be a UN document. We want it to be owned by Islamic organizations. So we have sent it to more than 350 Islamic organizations all over the world, and we have been receiving reviews and comments. But at the end of the day, it will have to be endorsed or adopted by an organization. And this is why we're working with ISISCO, and we are working with the Council of Muslim Elders, and we're working with Al-Azhar to adopt
Hmm.
this document as an Islamic document rather than as a UN document. And we're hoping to have that in the next few months.
Wow. Okay. And what is your dream for the Al-Mizan document and then movement, right? Because the aim is to create a movement based on the document. What are you hoping to achieve by publishing this and by creating this document and movement?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. If we just publish a document and say, well, people, here it is, use it, it wouldn't, serve the purposes. So
Hmm.
in the document itself, we have made very important recommendations to take it further than being a document. So the document is important for people to understand the linkages between Islam and the environment from all its perspectives, but also we want this document to be a living document, to be a guiding document for actions. So we're proposing in the document to, for example, establish Al-Mizan Academy, which will go even further into these perspectives and these teachings of Islam, and dig deep in what they mean, how they contribute to science, how they contribute to behavioral change of the people, and so on. So Al-Mizan Academy would do a lot of research on water resources and Islam, climate change and Islam, ecosystem restoration and Islam, and so on. A second objective is to launch a global movement. It is unfortunate that activism and environmentalism in the Islamic countries is not as it is important for the Western world. So while charity to Muslims is very important, you do charity almost every day, especially in Ramadan, after Eid, and so on. But charity is translated usually into giving money or food. So we want activism and charity to be linked together in terms of, making good to the environment. So planting a tree is an act of charity as well, because according to Islam, if you plant a tree and a bird eats from it, or a person uses its shade, is sadaqah, is a good deed. So this is again a perspective that we are trying to work on by organizing such activism and
Mhm.
creating Al-Mizan movement. Another thing is that young Muslims, um, usually they have this sort of conflicts with, what do we do with our religion? Do we go out there and say, well, Islam is the solution, but how Islam is the solution?
Mhm.
Or be frustrated and, be in conflict with everybody else. So we want to create a youth movement that is educated, capacity built, and with objectives of doing well to the people and to the environment. So the Al-Mizan young or youth movement to implement what is recommended in Al-Mizan. Certainly, there are many people who are doing excellent work on the relationship between Islam and the environment. So we're also planning to establish a global award that encourages and inspires people to do more and to study the relationship, or to go and in fact establish Islamic botanic gardens, or plant forests, or conserve water resources, or prevent pollution from an Islamic perspective. So this award would give them, incentives to do so. And there are many more recommendations. And we believe if Islamic institutions adopt these recommendations, you would have a global, massive Islamic movement contributing to nature and sustainability.
Wow. Well, I hope it will be a success. So what I'm hearing you say is actually it's twofold, right? You want Muslims to realize what an important part environmental conservation or preventing climate change is within their faith, and to take it as a daily practice. And then we also need like a capacity building, developing leadership and developing infrastructure around all these people to facilitate them within their actions, whether they are small or large, local or global. And then really have, well, perhaps take a serious step in my dream, which is for Muslims to become global leaders in addressing climate change. Because I believe that is what Islam is asking from us, to be
Definitely.
moral global leaders.
Yeah, and Islam, in the Quran and in the Hadith and practices of Muslims, does impact your daily practices. Islam tells you what you can eat and what you cannot eat. So there is halal and there's haram. Um, Islam tells you how to dress and be modest. Islam tells you what to eat, right?
Hmm.
Tayyib, and so on. So it does impact the daily practices. These practices are not practiced in or practiced from a religious understanding that it's only ham that is forbidden. No, I mean, God asks us to eat al-tayyib from the food, the things that are good for the people, whether it is good for the health or good for the individual or good for the environment. So that component we're bringing out more, to be more understood by the followers. So, working with the Islamic institutions and on Islamic perspectives may be easier because it is already there, but it needs to be brought out more obviously for the people to understand and follow.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to shift perspectives for a little bit. We've discussed what Muslims and Islamic organizations should realize and practice. At the beginning, you mentioned that within the current environmental movement, perhaps within the establishment of the Sustainable Development Goals, um, the power and capacity of faith organizations was not really utilized or perhaps included to the extent that it should. I'm very curious. In your opinion, what is something that governments and large corporations should know about Islam to better be able to engage with them, to better be able to include Muslims, and also to be able to reach Muslims within their communication narratives, within their strategies? What opportunities are there?
Well, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with the message, he started by telling people, the good deeds, the values, worshiping God, and that there is a divine power out there looking after us and asking us to be good people, good citizens, and so on. But later in the message and the journey of Prophet Muhammad salam, he started institutionalizing Islam and putting structures and systems that govern the communities in moving in good deeds forward and building a civilized nation. So if you look at the practices and the examples out there, you would find, for example, establishing zakat. And zakat is a financial system. And, currently you would find Western banks and institutions using the Islamic financing principles because they are important in, the partnership in the loss and profit, more than, building on the principle of interests. And I take interest whatever happens to the project that I have invested in. And this is wrong because this has led to the 2008 economic crisis. And what was spared is actually the Islamic investments because it worked on these financial principles. Zakat is also a principle that Muslim scholars now do not see that their channels of spending is only on giving charity to the people, but also in investing in societal well-being. So societal well-being includes living in harmony with nature. So there are green zakat bonds now. So this financial system is something that financing institutions should study, adopt, and implement for the benefits of the society. If you look into the environment itself and ecosystems, let's say, something that is not in the minds of everybody, what are ecosystems? If you know about it. Ecosystems was and protection of nature was an essential component of what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did, which is establishing of Al-Hima system. Al-Hima system is a comprehensive natural reserve system whereby hunting was regulated. Hunting when, the timing of the year, hunting what, old or young animals, the capacity of a reserve, how much you can hunt and when to stop hunting, which are actually the principles adopted by IUCN, WWF, the UN, and so on in these days. And that was established for 1400 years ago. So these systems of natural or nature protection have existed and are systemic and can be adopted by corporations, businesses, and so on. Private sector, most or few or good number of businesses are actually owned by believers. So why believers, when they go to their Friday prayers, they think of God and the good deeds and so on. But then on Saturday, when they go back to their businesses, they start, making the utmost profit they can get, and so on. So we tell people from an Islamic perspective that when you do business, you also integrate your beliefs in your businesses, in your private sector profit. So it is profit for the people and for the planet. So it has to come back to the society. And these are the principles of zakat again, and the that you have to pay for whatever you save from your businesses. You have to put it back into the market, so you make the market always developing rather than, saving, in banks and so on. It has to come back for societal benefits. So a lot
Mm.
of principles in Islam can contribute to, the sustainability of businesses and corporations.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Um, are there principles and concepts within Islam that we have to research more or understand better or perhaps translate better from Arabic to English or other languages? Are there concepts that have not been fully understood within our current in the current availability of knowledge? And do you have any recommendations for people who want to either do a research topic or start a business in a field where you're like, this is where we need more people or capacity?
Yes, I believe, to tell you the truth, most of the principles of Islam are not being fully understood by at least the followers. I am sure
Mm.
the Muslim scholars do understand the relationship, but it is not translated to the general public and the Muslim followers. Simple concepts like Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, which we recite several dozens of times every day when we do prayers, when we start eating. Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. What does Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim mean to, to nature, right? Um,
Hmm.
it is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, characteristics of God, but also God asked us to be rahimin, to be, kind to other people, but also to the environment. So here comes the concept of, animals and welfare of animals. Here comes the principle of going and giving others, and so on and so forth. For example, the concept of interconnectedness of communities. In Islam, um, the Quran says that we are created as one of other societies. That is not only, people's societies, but creations, other living beings as societies as well. So how do we interact and interconnect with other societies of God's creation? So these
Mm.
principles are not well understood by the general public, and maybe they need to be brought again to the attention of faith leaders, so when they preach, when they teach people about Islamic principles, they go deep into explaining this relationship between these principles and living in harmony with nature.
Yeah. What I'm also hearing you say, which is quite beautiful, is that it doesn't have to be complicated, right? If you're just trying to be rahmatul lil alameen, or to bring to life ar-Rahman ar-Rahim within your daily life, then you could make huge steps, right? So we've talked about a lot of concepts and methods and ways of environmental conservation, but it doesn't have to be complicated, right? If by practicing the first ayah of Surah Al-Fatiha, perhaps, or reflecting on it, you can already take huge steps.
Definitely. I mean, it is just simple practices. For example, the hadith that says if you were at a river and you were doing ablution, you need to conserve water, and you are on a running river. So look at the vision that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had at that time. Running rivers will not run forever unless you sustain. So the practices, we do ablution 5 times a day. So if we conserve in each time we do it, conserve 1 or 2 liters, imagine 10 to 20 liters of water is conserved by each individual every day. 1.8 billion Muslims, that is,
Yeah.
18 billion liters of water saved every day. So these principles are not complicated, are very easy to adopt, and can, have humongous impacts on nature and, our living with nature.
Hmm. Yeah. What are some other practices that Muslims should be doing more regularly, and perhaps people in general, but listeners to the podcast should be doing more regularly?
Well, indeed, the issue of climate change is an existential threat to humanity. And, one way of fighting climate change is planting trees. And planting trees for Muslims is an obligation. As in the hadith, if the doomsday comes and you have a sapling in your hand, if you can, you have an obligation to plant it. So even, we're seeing that, life is ending. It is doomsday. The sun is rising from the east, or the west, and things are changing. And Islam is asking you to plant a tree. So if we adopt this principle, we understand the importance of planting trees. So planting tree on every occasion is a type or an act of charity, an act of good deeds. So planting trees, and one adult tree, consumes 22 kilograms of carbon dioxide. This is not understood by them. It's not only providing shade or probably giving fruits, but it's also contributing to purifying the atmosphere, fighting climate change, bringing rain, areas, and reducing the temperature of, the atmosphere. So many benefits of planting trees. This is a daily practice, or at least in occasions, in Ramadan, in Eid, in birthdays, celebrating a wedding. You have to, make that practice sustainable, or that memory sustainable, by planting trees. This is
Hmm.
one simple act that every single person can do.
Yeah, that would be beautiful, right? If every Eid we all planted a tree, or we gifted each other planted trees, perhaps.
Let
That's a great
alone
idea.
sustainable forestry, for example. If you
Mm.
plant fruit trees, for example, look, who would benefit from it? How it might generate income for the people for selling these fruits and so on. So the benefits are tremendous. We need to
Mm.
understand that, and we need to practice
Yeah, yeah. You live in Nairobi currently, and that's where the UN headquarters is. What is what what is I'm asking this. Let me rephrase that. For me, living in the West, uh, uh, climate change is quite far away. We notice it every now and then. We cannot skate on ice anymore in winter, or it gets a little bit hotter in summer. But I think that in many, especially sub-Saharan African nations, climate change is reality and has been reality for a long time, decades. Could you paint us a picture? What are the changes that local people with that you work with in Africa and around the world are noticing right now?
Yeah, this is a beautiful question, and very pertinent, because people are witnessing it now on a daily basis. I tell you, uh, um, Kenya, the average monthly rainfall in Kenya says that each month there must be rain, because it's tropical, right? And historically, uh, 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 there is rainfall in every and each month. Of course, there are rainy months, there are short months, long rainy months, and so on. But over the past 4 years, the pattern of rainfall has tremendously changed in Kenya. And a couple of months ago, the government of Kenya, the president of Kenya, in support by the UN, have launched an appeal to help in the drought that has hit Kenya. People are dying, animals are dying, crops are dying, economy is suffering, and people are migrating from their lands they are used to harvest into the cities because there are better opportunities and so on. So we are seeing this, in fact, obvious in front of our eyes happening. uh, and I remember in 2017 when I came to Nairobi, I used to hold an umbrella every single day for a whole year because it used to rain. For the past 2 years, I even forgot where my umbrella is.
Subhanallah.
Subhanallah, it is happening and hugely happening. In Pakistan, look what happened in Pakistan. 30 million people were affected. 7,000 people lives were lost. They expect that they would need $1 trillion to bring back Pakistan to where it was before the flood. And people are still suffering. And that is because something that Pakistan did not do. Pakistan's contribution to climate change is minimal, is marginal. But the impacts of climate change is actually impacting those developing countries that are more
Susceptible.
prone to the impacts of climate change. But I mean, we don't wish to any country, any person to feel the impacts of climate change, but it is happening in the Western world. The forest fires in California and the US, the drying rivers in Europe, the floods that are taking place everywhere are messages of wake up messages to every nation that we are all in this together. Climate change is not sparing anyone. Yes, rich nations might be able to adapt or build maybe, high walls or raise, the foundations of their buildings to avoid sea level rise. But it is impacting food security at the global level. It is impacting, migration. Europe and the US will face migration waves from poor countries, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, and they might not be able to handle that. 2 years ago, there was a UN security meeting, and they were discussing what are the global security issues facing the humanity. And they all agreed that climate security or security issues resulting from climate change is number one priority that they need to deal with. So these are the global issues that we are facing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for painting us that picture and taking us within, well, the daily reality of many people worldwide. And hopefully not, but perhaps the reality for even more people as this crisis worsens throughout time. I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Iyad, for your time. Dr. Iyad. I will cut that out, for your time. And taking us within your view, what you've been doing, what you've been building for the past decades. I really look forward to the publishing of the Al-Mizan document and the program. And where can people find out more about either Al-Mizan or becoming involved? And perhaps also some of the documents you mentioned, some of the resources. Where can people find more about those three things?
We have on our website, UNEP's website, which is UNEP.org. We have a special sub website for the Faith for Earth initiative. And through that, or within that, we have some web pages on Al-Mizan, who
Mm.
is the core team, who is the drafting team, some of the news capturing news about Al-Mizan, and certainly they can write to us. And hopefully very soon we will be launching this global campaign on Al-Mizan, and then requesting people to join forces to, even establish their own Al-Mizan groups, to work on the principles of Al-Quran, of course, and Al-Mizan as, extracted from Al-Quran. So we are not, and I want to make this very clear, we are not replacing, the teachings of Al-Quran or Al-Hadith or Islamic principles and practices, but we are translating them in a language that is understood not only by Muslims, but by all other religions. And I
Mm.
also want to mention here that as the United Nations, we are working with all religions across the globe. So we are supporting the Laudato Si for the Catholics. We're supporting Al-Mizan for Muslims, and we are working with now the Hindus to come up with a similar approach, similar document, similar movement for Hindus who represent 1.2 billion people on the face of this
Wow.
earth.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I will make sure to include some links to the resources within the podcast information as well as during publishing. Jazakallah khairan for your time. I hope there will be a lot of barakah within your time and your work. And I hope to see you sometime again, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Elias. It's been a pleasure, and anytime I'll be happy to talk to you and share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah.